Today on the Gem Cutter's Craft, we're going to be recutting an 11-carat emerald. So the first step with any cutting is to attach the stone onto the dop. So the first thing I have to do is prepare my red dop wax in the flame. I roll it against the tweezers to make a nice cone shape as the wax is getting warm and melty and malleable. Once my wax is ready, I gently heat up the emerald. I don't want to get it too hot because this stone's full of inclusions and I don't want to crack it or pop it. So once the stone's a little bit warm, enough for the wax to be able to stick, I press the two together, and now it's all about the handwork. I use my fingers and a little bit more heat to manipulate the wax and to create a nice supportive cushion that's going to hold my stone onto the wax so that no problems come as I'm cutting the stone. Once I'm happy with the supportive wax cone that I've made, it's time to put the stone into the handpiece. And since this stone is rectangular and it already has a shape, we want to make sure to align the stone with the index gear. So I put the index onto 96 and I put my polishing lap onto the machine, and I'm going to manually line up the stone with the lap and make sure that it's perfectly flat along one of the sides. So here you can see the 96-48 line is perfectly lined up with the stone, and it's time to start cutting the outline. So part of the reason why we want to recut the stone is because all of the facets are crooked, the outline shape's crooked, nothing's parallel, and also we've got a very big window that we're trying to close as much as we can. Now I already know that I'm not going to be able to close the entire window because the customer wants the stone to be no smaller than 8 carats, so I've got to really respect that weight. So I start by making my outline shape, and then I'm going to use a measuring loop to make sure that all my corners are the exact same size. This is really important to get a harmonious and symmetrical emerald cut. Once my outline shape's done, I'm going to recut the entire crown at the exact same angles that they're already at, and I do this by touching a little bit and just testing and finding the original angles of the crown. Once I've figured out the angle, I just go around and cut everything. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to realign the facets with this new outline shape, and also to get rid of any of the old abrasion that's on there. So here you can see the crown of the stone is all done, all the facets are cut, the table's cut, and we can even see a little bit of my design with the angles here. Now that all of the facets are cut and I'm happy with the shape of the stone, it's time to go ahead and polish everything. So I set up my paper towels, I've set up my lap with my polishing grits, and I start with the tier 1 facets, and I'm just going to go around and polish everything and make sure that all of my meet points are tight, all my lines are straight, and everything looks really nice and really even, with no scratches and no problems with any facets, no skin. The difficult thing about cutting emeralds, and especially an emerald with this many inclusions, is it's hard to tell what's an inclusion, what's a surface reaching inclusion, and what's a scratch. So I have to really rock my stone back and forth and get the light to reflect so I can look between the shadow and the brightness and the amount of light that passes in between. This is really helping me to see what I'm doing. So I just go through and I'm going to polish each one at a time. I use the outside band of the lap to take the skin off, and once all the skin's gone, I use the inside band of the lap to take off all of the scratches and get a really nice polish. Here you can see the first facet finish, and I've got a really nice shine, no scratches, just reflection, and it's time to do the others. And that's when disaster strikes. My stone pops off the wax, which is a bummer. So I use glue. Luckily there was enough wax on the stone that I was able to just puzzle piece it back together, and I'm able to jump right back into where I started. And here you can see I've gone through and polished the entire crown. All the facets are polished, all the lines are nice and straight and even, and it's time to flip over the stone. So I'm going to heat up the wax a bit and pull the wax back as I'm heating it so I can get the stone off the dop without taking too much wax off. And once I've got the stone off, I'm going to clean it off a little bit in acetone, and here we can see the crown's been recut, the stone's been realigned, but we haven't done anything to the bottom yet. So now it's time to do a glue transfer. So I'm going to use a little bit of super glue on top of my acetone jar, and I've got a flat dop set up in my handle. So all I have to do is dip that into the glue and then take my clean new crown and push the table right onto the dop. And I make sure that it's centered by eye. Just a little bit of tap here and there, make sure everything's centered. And it only takes a few seconds. It's really pretty easy, easier than it seems like it would be. And then we can see that my stone is perfectly centered, and I just need to wait about 10 minutes for it to dry, and then I'm ready to go on and start cutting the pavilion side. So I need to line the stone back up again, just like we did at the beginning. So I line up the long side with the polishing lap while the index gear's on 96, so I've got a starting point, and now we can go ahead and figure out what our new angles are going to be, which is the fun part, closing the window. So I start by cutting in a few angles and just touching, seeing, looking, and I figured out what is a good starting point. I want to make these sides a little bit shallower at the base so that I have room to push in the angles and close the window. So I'm experimenting, I'm going through, and eventually I come up with a 4-step angle sequence that I like. Now the long ends and the short ends have different angles. We don't want to bring too much of the yellow color in from the short sides. And I go ahead and I cut all the facets, and then it's time to switch laps and get ready for polishing. But this tin lead lap is a bit worn from polishing the big facets on the crown. So I go ahead and I rescore it, I redress both of the rings, and then it's time to go through and just polish all of the facets that I cut and make sure that all of the lines are straight and even and all the meet points are nice and tight. And just step by step, facet by facet, I go through and I polish each one. Now, there's still one tier at the culet of the stone that's windowed. It's about 10 degrees, and it's just not possible to be able to close the window on this stone without dramatically reducing the weight, which wouldn't work with the customer's wishes. So here we can see that I've finished the first tier. Everything's nice and shiny, and you can see such a contrast from tier 1 to the rest of them, which are all matte. Now we can see the long sides are completely repolished with those angles, and I need to go through and polish the facets on the end of the stone. And now we can see the entire stone is finished. All the facets are polished, all the lines are parallel, and everything's nicely laid out. So the final step is to put the stone into acetone for a few hours to let the glue naturally dissolve away, and then we can see how we did. And here we are, a beautiful green emerald, full of sparkle, full of life, and most importantly, full of color. Here's the glamour shot, and let's see how we did from the before and after. So we can see that we've improved the color, we've definitely improved the shape, and retained 74% of the yield and kept the stone above 8 carats, which means that this is a successful recutting story that satisfies our customers' needs. If these cutting videos on YouTube have been inspiring you to want to learn gem cutting, then I invite you to check out our gem cutting school, Faceting Apprentice. We have a series of online courses where you can learn how to facet stones from your own home, from your own studio. And as you can see, we have a series of different classes from emerald cuts to software design, and of course the foundations to learn how to cut. All of the classes are videos, so you can buy them, watch them as many times as you need to, and anytime you want to go back and refresh yourself, you can rewatch them again and again an unlimited amount of times. So the foundations course is 8 hours long, and it teaches you everything you want to know from rough to dopping to faceting to polishing. All you need is a faceting machine and tools. So if you're interested in learning how to cut, then check out facetingapprentice.com. This has been Justin K. Prim with the Gem Cutter's Craft. Thanks for joining me here on YouTube, and to all my Patreon supporters, I really appreciate your support. If you want to help the channel out, please go check us out on Patreon, and I'll see you in the next video.